When a man named Marcus Webb pulled his broken-down van onto the side of Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, he thought his day was completely over. His engine was leaking. His job interview was 45 minutes away. He had exactly one good shirt, one clean manila folder, and 1 hour before everything he had worked for the last 6 months would disappear into the California morning like steam off a hot engine. He sat down on the guardrail. He called AAA. He put his head in his hands. And then a motorcycle pulled over. The rider didn't have to stop. Nobody asked him to. He just saw a man in trouble on the side of the road and did the most simple, obvious thing in the world. He pulled over and asked if everything was okay. He was tall, quiet, wearing a beaten-up leather jacket and riding a bike that looked, to Marcus's eye, like something you'd find listed online for $2,000 with a busted headlight and a note that said, "As is." So Marcus did something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He made a joke about the bike, right to the rider's face. He called it a beater. He laughed a little. He thought he was being funny and relaxed and normal, the way people act when they're terrified and trying not to show it. The rider looked at the bike. Then he looked at Marcus. And in the quietest, most level voice Marcus had ever heard, he said just 3 words back to him. And then he made a phone call that bought Marcus the 1 hour he needed to save everything. His interview, his income, his daughter's belief that her dad was going to be okay. Marcus still didn't know who he was. Not yet. That was about to change. Because 30 seconds later, 3 black SUVs pulled off the highway in a slow, controlled line behind the motorcycle. The doors opened. A large man in a dark jacket stepped out, looked directly at the rider standing next to Marcus on the gravel shoulder, and said 2 words that made Marcus's entire world stop spinning. 2 words. A first name and a last name. And in the space between hearing those 2 words and being able to breathe again, Marcus Webb understood exactly what he had done. He had mocked Keanu Reeves's motorcycle. To Keanu Reeves, who had just saved his morning, who had said nothing about it, who was standing right next to him. Stay with us for the entire video, because what happened next, what Marcus did with that moment, and what occurred inside the very hotel he interviewed at 4 months later, is a story about so much more than one embarrassing morning on a highway. It is about what a person does with the worst version of themselves when the world holds up a mirror. And it is about what it really means when someone pulls over. Not because they have to, not because anyone is watching, but simply because you are there and they stopped. And sometimes that is the whole of everything. Marcus Webb ironed his shirt at 5:47 in the morning. He didn't have to be anywhere until 9. But sleep had stopped working for him around 3 a.m., the way it often did now, so he lay in the dark for 2 hours, staring at the ceiling fan that wobbled slightly on every 3rd rotation, listening to his neighbor's TV through the wall, and thinking about money. At 5:30, he gave up. He got up, he made coffee, and then he got out the iron. And the shirt was light blue, Oxford cloth, the kind with a slight texture you could feel with your thumb. He'd bought it in 2019 for his cousin Darnell's wedding in Long Beach, paid $42 for it at a Macy's on clearance, which felt like a splurge at the time, which now felt like nothing, which told you something about how much everything had changed. He set the iron to medium. He pressed each panel slowly and carefully. Front left, front right. The collar, both sleeves, the back. He did the back twice. Steam rose up and disappeared into the dim kitchen light, and the whole apartment smelled briefly like something good was happening. Marcus Webb was 41 years old. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on Sepulveda Boulevard in Torrance, California. You're on the 2nd floor of a building that had been painted beige so many times The window frames barely opened anymore. The washing machine in the unit only ran on cold water. The bathroom tile had a crack along the baseboard that he'd been meaning to caulk since February. His neighbor directly below him, a retired postal worker named Mr. Castillo, played Spanish ballads every evening at low volume, which Marcus had come to find comforting without ever admitting it to anyone. None of this would matter if things were going differently. 6 months ago, Marcus had walked into work at Consolidated Pacific Properties in El Segundo, a commercial real estate company that managed 12 office parks across the South Bay. And his HR manager, a thin woman named Gretchen who always smelled like the same lavender lotion. She had asked him to come sit down. She had a folder on the desk in front of her. The folder had his name on the tab. "Your position has been restructured," she said. That was the word. Restructured. As if his 12 years, his maintenance schedules, his 6 a.m. start times, his weekends fixing HVAC systems that no one else wanted to touch. As if all of that was just a piece of furniture that the company had decided to move to another room, or maybe put in storage, or maybe throw away entirely. The word restructured made it sound like something was being made better, like progress was happening. It did not feel like progress. He signed the paperwork. He shook Gretchen's hand. He took the elevator down to the parking garage on level 2, sat in the driver's seat of his 2009 Dodge Caravan, and cried for 15 minutes with the engine off and the windows up so no one could hear. Then he drove home and made his daughter grilled cheese for dinner and did not say a word about any of it. Priya was 9. She had her mother's eyes and her grandfather's stubbornness and a way of noticing things that made Marcus feel, sometimes, like she was the parent. She was in 4th grade at Fern Elementary. She had a best friend named Zoe and a second best friend named Caitlin, and a strong opinion about which one was a better person, which she shared openly and often. She believed, with no evidence and total certainty, that everything was going to work out. Marcus loved her more than he'd ever loved anything. He also knew that love did not pay the $1,850 rent that was due in 18 days. Since losing the job, and he had applied for 47 positions. 47. He had a spreadsheet. He kept it updated not because he enjoyed looking at it, but because it was the only thing that made him feel like he was doing something instead of just falling. 3 callbacks, 2 interviews, 0 offers. The most recent rejection had come the week before in a 3-line email that began, "We appreciate your interest," and ended with the word pursuits, as in, "We wish you the best in your future pursuits." He had read it twice, and then closed his laptop and stared at the wall for a while. His ex-wife Diane called every Sunday from Portland. She was not unkind. She was practical the way some people are practical. Efficiently, without softness, which was not cruelty, but sometimes felt adjacent to it. She always asked how things were going, but he always said, "Getting there." They both knew what that meant. His savings, $1,200. His rent, $1,850. Priya's upcoming school field trip to the Griffith Observatory, $45, due Friday. He had not told Priya about any of this. She still slept in her room surrounded by glow-in-the-dark stars he'd stuck to her ceiling when she was 6. She still believed the sun rose specifically for her. He intended to keep it that way for as long as possible. So he ironed his shirt. He printed his resume at the FedEx on Hawthorne Boulevard because the ink in his home printer had been gone for 3 weeks. He put it in a clean manila folder. He polished his shoes with a tin of kiwi polish he found under the bathroom sink, using a folded paper towel because he couldn't find the applicator brush. He had a job interview at 9 o'clock. The Nobu Ryokan Malibu, A facilities director, $87,000 a year. Benefits included. Real title, real future. He left at 7:15 because he did not trust the 405, which is the correct decision every single time, for every person, under every possible condition in the greater Los Angeles area. He took the 405 north, then the 10 west, then turned onto Pacific Coast Highway heading north, with the ocean opening up on his left, enormous and silver in the early morning light, and the mountains rising on his right, and the sky doing that thing it does in October in California, where it's so clean and blue it almost looks painted. At 8:03 a.m., his van made a sound. Quiet, almost gentle, like a sigh. Like something that had been holding on for a very long time, had finally decided it was done. The sound came from somewhere under the hood. Not a bang, not a grind. Just that soft, wet exhale, like the van had made a decision and was at peace with it. Marcus felt it before he fully heard it. A slight shudder through the steering wheel, a drop in the temperature needle's steadiness. He looked down at the dashboard, and the temperature gauge was climbing, slow and sure, into the red. He pulled over. The shoulder of Pacific Coast Highway north of Malibu Road is narrow. There's not much between the white line and the guardrail, maybe 6 feet of gravel and dirt, and the kind of litter that blows in off the highway and never quite leaves. On the left, the ocean. On the right, the bluffs. Above, the pale October sky. Below, the asphalt, warm already even at 8 in the morning. Marcus put the van in park. He sat for a second. He looked at the gauge. Deep red now. He turned off the engine. He got out. Then he walked to the front and popped the hood. A thin ribbon of steam curled up from the engine block, pale and almost polite about it, like it didn't want to make a scene. He could see the coolant, bright green, the color of a sports drink, pooling on the engine and dripping steadily down onto the asphalt below. Each drop hit the ground and spread in a small starburst and disappeared. He stood there for a moment. He looked at the ocean. It was vast and flat and completely indifferent, doing what it had always done, not particularly interested in Marcus Webb, or his coolant, or his manila folder, or the interview 45 minutes up the road. He sat down on the guardrail. The metal was warm from the morning sun. He pressed his palms flat against it. He looked at his polished shoes on the gravel shoulder. He thought about the FedEx receipt in his pocket from printing the resume. $2.40. He thought about the $1,200. He thought about Priya's face that morning when he dropped her at Fern Elementary, the way she'd hugged him around the middle, both arms, hard, and said into his jacket, "You're going to get it, Daddy. I know it." He didn't move for a moment. Then he called AAA. The woman on the line was efficient and kind. She pulled up his membership, confirmed the location when he read out the mile marker on the guardrail post, and told him the estimated wait time was 45 minutes to an hour. He thanked her. He hung up. He put his head in his hands. He didn't hear the motorcycle coming. Not at first. PCH has its own constant sound. Tires, wind, or the occasional truck, and a single engine can get swallowed in all that noise until it's very close. He became aware of it, the way you become aware of a change in temperature. Gradually, then all at once. He looked up. A dark motorcycle was slowing down. It moved onto the gravel shoulder behind his van in a smooth, controlled arc and stopped. The engine cut. The sudden quiet was surprising. Marcus watched. The rider was tall. He swung his leg off the bike with the practiced ease of someone who had done that exact motion thousands of times. He pulled off his helmet, black, no graphics, no brand markings, and hung it by the chin strap from the handlebar. He had dark hair, slightly threaded with gray, pushed back from his face by the helmet. He wore a black leather jacket, broken in and worn soft. The kind that takes years to look like that. Dark jeans, boots, nothing flashy anywhere. He walked toward Marcus with a steady, unhurried step. Not the walk of someone performing a rescue. The walk of someone for whom stopping was just the obvious, natural, unremarkable thing to do. He looked at the van. He looked at Marcus. "Hey," he said, "you okay?" His voice was even, calm, not loud. The kind of voice that doesn't need to be loud because it's never in a hurry. Marcus looked at his face. Something about it was familiar. The way a song is familiar when you can't name it. The kind of face you feel like you've seen before without being able to say where. Marcus's brain reached for the connection and came back empty. He let it go. "Coolant leak," Marcus said. "I'm cooked." The man nodded once, already moving toward the front of the van, but he crouched down and looked underneath without being asked. He stood back up, brushing nothing off his jeans, and looked at the engine. "Lower hose," he said simply. "You losing it fast." "Yeah," Marcus said. "You call anyone?" "AA. 45 minutes, they said. Maybe an hour." The man looked at his watch. Plain watch, leather strap, no shine to it. He looked up PCH in the direction Marcus had been heading, then back. "You got somewhere you need to be?" And something about the question, the way it was asked with no agenda behind it, no impatience in it, no hint that the answer would change whether or not he stayed, made Marcus answer honestly, in the raw, stripped-down way you answer when you're sitting on a guardrail with nothing left to protect. "Job interview," Marcus said. 45 minutes up the road, in Malibu." He paused. "First real one I've had in 6 months." The man was quiet. He didn't fill the silence with noise. He just let the information land, respected it. "Which place?" he asked. "Nobu, the ryokan." The man nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a phone. Regular size, small crack in the top corner of the screen, no case on it. "You got a number for them?" Marcus blinked. "You don't have to." "I know," the man said. "Just that. I know. No performance in it, no virtue. Just 2 words that meant, I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. And the difference between those 2 things matters." Marcus reached through the passenger window and grabbed the manila folder off the seat. He found the printed confirmation email. He read out the number. The man dialed. He put the phone to his ear. He waited. No, and Marcus, standing on the shoulder of PCH with steam still rising from his engine and his good shirt collecting highway dust, looked at the motorcycle sitting quietly on the gravel behind his van. It was dark, low to the ground. Industrial-looking, almost. Raw in a way that expensive things sometimes weren't. It looked old to him. Used. The kind of thing you might see listed online for a couple $1,000s, high mileage, runs okay, needs some work. He looked at it. He looked at the man on the phone. And the thought, the stupid, proud, scared, foolish thought, came out of his mouth before anything in him could catch it. "No offense," Marcus said, nodding at the bike, "but I'm surprised that thing made it all the way out here. Looks like it's seen better days." He said it like a joke. The kind of dumb, reaching joke you make when you're embarrassed and you want to sound relaxed, and you end up sounding like neither. The man looked at the bike. Then he looked at Marcus. His expression didn't change. Not 1 degree. "She runs fine," he said. And then he turned back to his phone call. Marcus watched him on the phone. The man spoke the way he did everything else, quietly, clearly, without wasting a single word. He explained the situation to whoever answered. A broken-down vehicle on PCH. A candidate for the 10 o'clock. He checked the confirmation email Marcus was still holding. For the facilities director position. Would it be possible to push the 9 o'clock interview back by an hour? He did not say please in a begging way. He said it in the way of someone who respects other people's time, and therefore asks for things plainly and without drama. There was a pause. The man listened. "That works," he said. "Thank you." He hung up. He held the phone out toward Marcus, who was still holding the open manila folder like he'd forgotten it was in his hand. 10 o'clock, the man said. "You've got time." Marcus stared at him. They agreed?" Marcus said. "Just like that?" "Just like that." Marcus took a breath. Something was happening in his chest that he couldn't quite name. Not just relief, though it was that too. Something bigger than relief. Something that had to do with being seen. With someone stopping when they didn't have to, calling when they didn't have to. Standing on a gravel shoulder in a leather jacket at 8 in the morning for a stranger they owed absolutely nothing to. "I don't know how to thank you," Marcus said. "Seriously, I don't." "Don't worry about it," the man said. And that was when Marcus heard them. He heard them before he saw them. 3 engines, smooth and deep, coming from the south. He turned and looked back down PCH. 3 black Chevrolet Suburban SUVs were moving up the highway in a neat, controlled line. Windows tinted completely dark, moving at exactly the speed of traffic. Not fast, not slow. Perfectly measured. The kind of movement that doesn't happen by accident. They pulled off the highway one by one onto the gravel shoulder behind the motorcycle. 3 vehicles, 16 tires on gravel. They stopped in a line and sat there, engines running, perfectly still. No doors opened. Not immediately. The SUVs just waited. It was the waiting that did something to Marcus's stomach. Normal people in normal cars don't pull over and wait like that. That was coordinated stillness. That was practiced. That was the behavior of people whose entire job is to be ready for something. Then the front door of the first SUV opened. The man who stepped out was large in the way that certain men are large. Not threatening, just solid, like a door frame that had decided to start walking around. He wore a dark jacket and sunglasses, even though the morning sky was still mostly gray with a thin marine layer. He moved with the slow, deliberate calm of someone who has assessed 100 situations quickly and learned that rushing only makes things worse. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the leaking van. So he looked at the motorcycle. He looked at the man in the worn leather jacket standing on the shoulder. "Mr. Reeves," he said, "we've been about a mile behind you. Just wanted to make sure everything was all right." The world stopped. That was exactly how it felt to Marcus. Like someone had reached into the middle of the morning and pressed pause. The ocean kept moving. The cars on PCH kept passing. But inside Marcus Webb, everything went completely still. Mr. Reeves. He turned and looked at the man beside him. Really looked. The dark hair going gray. The stillness in the face. The way he carried himself like someone who had long ago stopped needing to prove anything to anyone. The voice that was even and calm and never in a hurry. His brain did the thing it had been reaching for since the moment the man took off his helmet. It connected the wires. It placed the face. And the word that came up, the name, landed in Marcus's chest like something dropped from a great height. Keanu Reeves turned toward the Suburban and said, simply, and without any drama at all, "Everything's fine. Sir's got a coolant leak. A AA is on the way." He turned back to Marcus. His expression had not changed, not even slightly. Marcus Webb had never in his life been unable to speak. He was not a quiet man by nature. He could talk to anyone: landlords, mechanics, school principals, HR managers with lavender lotion and folders with his name on the tab. Words had always come when he needed them. They were the one thing that had never let him down. They let him down now. His mouth was open. He was aware of that. He just could not locate anything to put in it. And Keanu Reeves was standing 18 inches away from him on the shoulder of Pacific Coast Highway. He had been standing 18 inches away for the last 12 minutes. He had crouched under Marcus's van. He had looked at his coolant leak. He had made a phone call on a cracked phone with no case and bought Marcus an extra hour of his life. He had listened to Marcus call his motorcycle a beater. He had said she runs fine and turned back to the call. And his face, right now, looking at Marcus with the same patient, unhurried expression it had worn since the moment he pulled off his helmet, showed nothing that looked like satisfaction. Nothing that looked like, now you know. Nothing that looked like the face of a man waiting to be thanked correctly, or recognized properly, or apologized to with enough feeling. He just looked like a man standing on a shoulder of a road, making sure another man was going to be okay. Marcus started. He stopped. He tried again. I said your bike. It's a good bike, Keanu said. The same words he'd used before. Quiet, solid, not pointed, not gracious in a performed way either. Just true. The way a person states a fact about something they love, without needing you to agree with them. Marcus looked at the motorcycle. He looked at it the way you look at something after you've been told you were wrong about it, which is different from just looking at something. It's slower, more honest. The bike was dark and low, hand-built looking. The frame had a muscularity to it that he hadn't paid attention to before. Too busy forming his opinion. There were no badges announcing what it was, no chrome flourishes, no design element that existed purely to impress someone standing next to it at a gas station. It was a machine that had been made by people who cared about what they were making, and it showed not in loudness, but in the opposite of loudness. Marcus didn't know yet that the bike was an Arch KR-GT1. He didn't know yet that Keanu had co-founded Arch Motorcycle Company with a master builder named Gard Hollinger in 2011 in Los Angeles, or that each bike was hand-built individually, or that the KR-GT1 starts at a price that would cover 2 years of Marcus's old salary. He didn't know any of that standing there on the gravel. He just knew, looking at it properly for the first time, that he had been wrong. And that the being wrong was not really about the motorcycle at all. It was about what he'd done with his fear that morning. And he had taken it. The $1,200, the $1,850, the 47 applications, the 3 callbacks, the field trip payment, Priya's too certain hug at the school gate, and he had aimed it sideways at a stranger who had done nothing but stop. That was the thing that sat in Marcus's chest now, heavier than embarrassment. He looked at Keanu. I owe you an apology, he said. The thing I said about the bike, that was... He shook his head. That was not okay. I was nervous, and I said something stupid, and I'm sorry. Keanu looked at him for a moment. You're having a hard morning, he said. Not, it's fine. Not, don't worry about it. Just an observation. Offered without judgment, like a hand placed briefly on a shoulder. Yeah, Marcus said. His voice came out smaller than he intended. Yeah, I am. Keanu nodded once, and he picked up his helmet from the handlebar. He turned it slowly in his hands, the way people turn things when they're deciding whether to say something more. The interview, he said. Go do the interview. That's the thing in front of you right now. Marcus nodded. He swallowed. Right. AAA's coming. You've got an hour." He looked at Marcus's shirt, the Oxford blue, the carefully ironed collar now collecting a little highway dust on the left shoulder. "Brush that off before you go in." Marcus looked down at the dust on his shoulder, then back up. There was a sound behind them. One of the SUV windows lowering. The large man in the dark jacket leaned slightly out. "Mr. Reeves, whenever you're ready." Keanu pulled the helmet on. He buckled the chin strap with 2 practiced clicks. He swung his leg over the Arch KRG-T1 in that same fluid. An unhurried way, he'd dismounted it. Like the bike, and the man had an agreement about how things were done between them. He started the engine, and the sound it made. Marcus would think about this later. Would think about it more than once, lying awake in the dark before the ceiling fan's wobble put him to sleep. The sound was not the sound of a beater. It was low and serious and certain. It was the sound of something that had been built with care by people who believed in what they were making. Something that knew exactly what it was and had nothing to explain to anyone. Keanu Reeves pulled out onto Pacific Coast Highway. The 3 black SUVs followed, one by one, smooth as a sentence. And then the sound faded north up the coast, swallowed by the wind and the ocean and the ordinary noise of a Tuesday morning on PCH. Marcus stood alone on the gravel shoulder. He reached up and brushed the dust off his left shoulder with the flat of his hand. Then he sat back down on the guardrail and put his face in his hands and cried. Not the polite, controlled kind of crying he'd done in the parking garage in El Segundo 6 months ago with the windows up so no one could hear. The other kind. The kind that means something is finally moving, that has been stuck for a very long time. The ocean went on doing what it had always done. It didn't watch. It didn't judge. It just kept moving forward. The Diriciway truck arrived 39 minutes later. The driver's name was Raymond. He was 56 years old, broad-shouldered, with a gray mustache and the unhurried competence of someone who had been pulling broken-down vehicles off Los Angeles roads since 1998 and had seen every possible version of a bad morning a person could have on the side of a highway. He hooked up the caravan without fuss. He talked the whole time about the traffic backing up near Topanga, about the Santa Ana winds coming in later that week, about how coolant leaks on older Dodge vans were, in his professional experience, basically a character trait of the vehicle, rather than a mechanical failure. Marcus sat in the passenger seat of the tow truck and let Raymond's voice wash over him like weather. He wasn't really listening. He was still on the guardrail in his mind, still feeling the weight of the morning settling into something he didn't have a word for yet. Raymond dropped the caravan at a Midas on PCH near Malibu Canyon Road. The mechanic was a young guy named Dario, 26, maybe 27, with a portrait of an older woman tattooed in fine black lines on his left forearm. His grandmother, Marcus assumed without asking. Some things you just recognize. Dario looked under the hood for 4 minutes. He stood up, wiped his hands on a blue shop rag, and gave his verdict with the calm certainty of someone who has delivered this particular news many times before. Burst lower coolant hose. Parts in stock. Labor included. $147. Marcus paid it without hesitating, which surprised him because $147 was not nothing right now, but something about the morning had rearranged the way numbers felt. He paid it and said thank you and called an Uber and stood in the Midas parking lot in his good ironed shirt, waiting for a white Honda Civic to come take him the rest of the way. He changed his collar in the Midas bathroom. He wetted a paper towel and pressed it gently along the dusty left shoulder of his shirt until most of it lifted. He looked at himself in the mirror above the sink for a long moment. He thought about what Keanu had said. The interview. That's the thing in front of you right now. He straightened his collar. He picked up the manila folder. The Uber driver didn't talk, which was exactly right. The Nobu Ryokan Malibu sits at 22,706 Pacific Coast Highway. It is a small, precise, beautiful place, right where the ocean nearly touches the road. 10 rooms, dark wood and stone. Says the sound of water everywhere, the actual ocean on one side, small interior fountains on the other. The kind of place that has thought carefully about every single thing inside it and made a decision about each one. Marcus walked in at 10:02 a.m. The receptionist looked up and smiled. Young woman, calm eyes, the practiced warmth of someone who makes every arriving guest feel like they were the person the building was waiting for. "Mr. Webb?" she said. "Yes," Marcus said. "They're ready for you." He nodded. He took one breath. He thought, very briefly, about a man in a leather jacket on a gravel shoulder who had said, "I know," like it was the simplest and most obvious thing in the world. He walked forward. The hiring manager's name was Solène Marchetti. She was 44. French-American. She had sharp and kind eyes behind thin-framed glasses and a way of sitting very still while someone else spoke that made you feel, immediately, that she was genuinely listening and not simply waiting for her turn. She asked the expected questions first: experience, scope of previous work, vendor management, emergency protocols. Marcus answered each one clearly and honestly, walking her through his 12 years, the properties, the teams he'd managed, the 5 a.m. calls about broken boilers, and the weekends he'd come in because the job needed doing, and he was the one who showed up. She wrote notes in a small leather notebook with a precise, unhurried hand. Then she looked up. "Why Nobu?" she asked. "Specifically." And this was the question Marcus had prepared an answer for. He had practiced it in the van on the way. Something polished. To something correct. Something about brand excellence and the unique challenge of maintaining a property at this level of hospitality. He opened his mouth to give that answer. And then he didn't. Instead, he told her about the morning. The coolant leak. The guardrail. The 45 minutes sitting on PCH with his good shirt getting dusty and his interview slipping away minute by minute. He told her about the man who pulled over and made the call and said, "I know, and she runs fine." And the interview, that's the thing in front of you right now. He did not say who the man was. That part wasn't the point. "I've spent 6 months thinking about what I lost," Marcus said. He looked at his hands briefly, then back up. "I forgot to think about what kind of person I want to be when I get it back." He paused. That man pulled over because it was the right thing to do. No reason beyond that. No angle. He met Solène's eyes. "I want to work in a place that thinks the same way. That sees the person in front of them before it sees anything else." Solène Marchetti looked at him for a moment. Then she wrote something in her notebook. The interview ran another 40 minutes. At the end, she walked him to the lobby, shook his hand with a firm, brief grip, and told him they had 2 more candidates that week and would be in touch by the following Friday. Marcus thanked her. He walked out into the Malibu afternoon. He stood on the edge of PCH and looked at the ocean. It was the same ocean from this morning, the same flat, silver, indifferent Pacific. But something about it looked different now. Or maybe something about the person looking at it was different, and it came to the same thing either way. He felt, for the first time in 6 months, entirely like himself. Not certain, not fixed, not safe yet, but himself. which, he was beginning to understand, was the only place anything real could start from. He picked Priya up from her after-school program at 5:30. He was standing at the gate when she came out, which was not the routine. The routine was the front steps, where the after-school coordinator handed kids off in small batches to whoever was picking them up. The gate was further. The gate meant he had walked the extra distance. Priya noticed things like that. She came through the door with her backpack on, the purple one, and almost as wide as she was tall, and a piece of construction paper held carefully in both hands so it wouldn't bend. She was looking down at it as she walked, making sure. Then she looked up and saw him at the gate, and she slowed. She read his face the way she always did, quickly, thoroughly, like a page she had memorized the layout of and could scan in seconds for anything new. She walked up to him. She looked at the construction paper in her hands, then held it up for him to see. It was a painting. A house beside water, blue and green and yellow, the colors applied with the full confidence of someone who has not yet learned to second-guess themselves. A sun in the top right corner that was at least 3 times too large for the sky around it, which is exactly how 9-year-olds paint suns and exactly how suns should be painted. "I made it in art," she said. "Ms. Renata let us pick anything." "It's beautiful," Marcus said. "I know," she said simply. She tucked it back under her arm. Then she looked at his face again. "You got it." "I don't know yet," Marcus said. "Maybe. They have 2 more people to see. They'll call by next Friday." She looked at him the way she sometimes did when she felt he was being unnecessarily complicated about something obvious. "You got it," she said again. He didn't argue. They drove home through the slow Tuesday traffic on Hawthorne Boulevard, with the radio on low and Priya's painting propped carefully in the back seat against her backpack so it wouldn't slide. She talked about Zoe and Caitlin and something that had happened at lunch involving a juice box and a misunderstanding that was, in Priya's detailed and strongly held opinion, entirely Caitlin's fault. Marcus listened. He answered in the right places, but part of him was still on PCH, still on the guardrail, still hearing that engine, low and serious and certain, pulling back onto the highway and disappearing north. After dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup because it was Tuesday. He helped Priya with her reading homework and lost the 9:30 bedtime argument by approximately the same margin he always lost it, which was completely. When her light finally went out, he sat down at the kitchen table. He poured himself a glass of water. He looked at Priya's painting propped against the kitchen wall. The house by the water. What the enormous sun. He picked up his phone. He typed Arch Motorcycle Company into the search bar. He read for a long time. He read about Gard Hollinger, the master builder. He read about the Los Angeles workshop where each bike was assembled by hand, one at a time, with the kind of attention that cannot be faked or rushed. He read about the KRGT1, its weight, its engineering, the philosophy behind its design. He watched a clip from Jay Leno's Garage where Keanu talked about the bikes with the unguarded enthusiasm of a person who genuinely loves what he is talking about. The kind of love that has nothing to do with being watched. He read about the other things too, the things he hadn't known standing on the shoulder that morning. He read about River Phoenix, Keanu's closest friend, who died on October 31st, 1993, outside the Viper Room on Sunset Boulevard. He read about Ava Archer Syme Reeves, the daughter Keanu and his girlfriend Jennifer had lost to a stillbirth in 1999. He read about Jennifer Syme, who died in a car accident in April 2001, 18 months after losing Ava. He sat with that for a long time. A man who had lost a best friend, a daughter, the woman he loved. a man who still pulled over. Marcus put his phone face down on the table. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the painting. He looked at his hands. Then he got up, found a piece of paper in the kitchen drawer between the takeout menus and the spare batteries, and sat back down. He wrote slowly. He wasn't sure why he was writing it. He had no address to send it to, no way to deliver it. He just knew, the way you sometimes know things that don't need explaining, and that it needed to exist outside of his own head. To the man who stopped. Thank you for the time you gave me. I hope you know what it was worth. He folded the paper in thirds. He held it for a moment. Then he walked to where his good jeans were hanging over the chair in the bedroom and slid the folded note into the front left pocket. He turned off the kitchen light. He went to bed. For the first time in 6 months, he was asleep before the ceiling fan completed 10 rotations. The call came on Thursday. Not next Friday, the way Solène Marchetti had said. Thursday, October 19th, 2023. 5 days after PCH. 5 days after the guardrail. 5 days after a motorcycle pulled over and a folded piece of paper found its way into the pocket of a pair of good jeans. Marcus was in the Torrance FedEx, printing job applications he no longer needed, when his phone rang. Unknown number. 310 area code. Malibu. He stepped outside onto the sidewalk. The Santa Ana winds had come in the way Raymond the tow truck driver had predicted, dry and warm from the mountains, moving through the street and lifting everything that wasn't weighted down. "Mr. Webb," Solène said, "I'm calling earlier than expected." His hand tightened on the phone. "We've completed our interviews," she said. The team was clear. A brief pause, the kind that lasts less than 2 seconds, but feels like standing on the edge of something high. "We'd like to offer you the position." He didn't speak immediately. "Mr. Webb?" "Yes," he said. Then, making himself slow down, making himself be present for the thing that was actually happening. "Yes, I'd be honored. And thank you." He stood on the Torrance sidewalk for 4 minutes after the call ended without moving. The Santa Ana wind moved around him. A receipt from someone's pocket skittered past his feet. He watched it go. Then he called Diane. She answered on the second ring with the careful voice she always used now. Braced, measured, ready for the Sunday version of him, the getting there version. "I got the job," he said. The sound she made was not a word. It was a breath, long and released, the way you release something you've been holding so long you'd forgotten you were holding it. It traveled 450 miles from Portland, Oregon, down through the phone, and landed in Marcus's chest like something warm. "Marcus," she said. "Yeah," he said. They talked for 11 minutes. It was the best conversation they'd had in 2 years. Though he picked Priya up from school personally that afternoon, standing at the gate again. She came out, saw him, and slowed. Read his face. The verdict arrived in her expression before he said a single word. A quiet, certain satisfaction, like someone who has been waiting for the rest of the world to catch up to what they already knew. "You got it," she said. "I got it," he said. She didn't shriek. She didn't jump. She walked directly to him and pressed her forehead against his chest and went completely still, the way she used to when she was very small and needed to feel that something solid was in the world. He put his hand on the back of her head. They stood there on the sidewalk outside Fern Elementary, while other kids moved around them like water around 2 rocks. "I knew," she said, into his jacket. "I know you did," he said. So he started at the Nobu Ryokan Malibu on Monday, November 6th, 2023. The first 3 days were orientation, learning the property, meeting the small, precise team, understanding the rhythms of a place that runs on careful attention. The building was everything the interview had suggested. Thoughtful, quiet. The kind of place where every decision, down to which towels went in which room, had been made on purpose. On the third day, Wednesday, November 9th, Marcus was moving through the service corridor behind the front desk when Solène stepped out of the office and stopped him. "Marcus," he turned. She was holding her phone. On the screen was an image, grainy, gray-toned, shot from an angle high above a road. A traffic camera. He could make out the timestamp in the corner. October 14th, 2023, 8:07. The image showed a shoulder of highway, a white van with its hood up, a dark motorcycle parked behind it, a tall man in a leather jacket, crouched near the front of the van, looking underneath. Marcus went very still. "This was posted to a Malibu community Facebook group 4 days ago," Solène said. Someone driving past recognized the motorcycle. She scrolled down slowly with her thumb. The comment with the most likes says, she paused, reading, "That's Keanu's arch. I've seen it parked at Point Doom a dozen times. He does this. He just stops for people. He never makes anything out of it." Marcus looked at the grainy image for a long time. The tall man crouched under the van, the motorcycle on the gravel, the ocean, just barely visible at the left edge of the frame, going on the way it always did. He handed the phone back. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. Solène slid her phone into her pocket. She looked at him with those sharp, kind eyes that had listened so carefully to his interview answer 19 days ago. "Because Mr. Reeves stays with us," she said. "Every year, without fail. He's booked for the second week of March." She paused. "I thought you'd want to know?" Marcus stood in the service corridor of the Nobu Ryokan Malibu. He thought about a folded piece of paper in the front left pocket of his good jeans, hanging on the chair in the bedroom of his apartment in Torrance. To the man who stopped. "Thank you for the time you gave me. I hope you know what it was worth." He thought about Priya's painting on the kitchen wall, the house by the water, the sun that was 3 times too big for the sky, because she had painted it the right size, the size it actually feels, not the size it actually is. He thought about a motorcycle engine, low, serious, certain, pulling out onto Pacific Coast Highway and heading north and disappearing into an ordinary Tuesday morning. He thought about what it means to pull over, not for recognition, not for the story it makes, not for the way it feels afterward, though it does feel like something, just because there is a person in front of you who needs it, and you are the one who stopped, and that is the whole of it. He looked at Solène. "Thank you," he said. He went back to work. He was still thinking about it 30 minutes later when his colleague Bay, passing him in the hallway with an armful of fresh linen, asked what he was smiling about. He thought for a moment. "Good bike," he said. B looked at him. "What?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Never mind." He kept walking, and in the front left pocket of his good jeans, hanging on the chair back home in Torrance, a folded piece of paper waited quietly for a second week in March. March came the way March always comes to Malibu. Quietly. Without announcement. The ocean shifting from its winter gray into something warmer and more awake. The light changing its angle just enough that you noticed it without being able to say exactly when it happened. The hills behind PCH going briefly green from the winter rains before the dry season pulled that green back again, the way it did every year, reliable as breathing. On the morning of March 11th, 2024, Marcus arrived at the Nobu Ryokan Malibu at 6:45. He did his rounds the way he always did, methodically, quietly, are the way a person moves through a place they have learned to care about. He checked the service corridor. He checked the exterior lighting along the ocean-facing walkway. He checked the small fountain in the interior courtyard that had a habit of running slightly low on cold mornings. At 7:20, a dark car pulled into the property. No SUVs, not today. Just one car, arriving the way anyone might arrive. Without spectacle, without announcement, without any signal that this was anything other than a person coming to a place they liked. To rest, the way people do when the world gets loud and they need somewhere quiet. Marcus was crossing the lobby when the front door opened. He did not stop walking. He did not stare. He kept his pace exactly the same. The measured, the purposeful walk of a man who belongs in the building he is moving through, which he did, which he had earned. But as they passed each other in the open lobby, the man with the dark hair going gray and the worn jacket and the same unhurried quality he carried everywhere like a second skin, that man glanced over. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. Nothing was said. There was no recognition on one side, and only quiet gratitude on the other. And between the two of them, in that 1 second, something passed that did not need a name. Marcus kept walking. He had a fountain to check. He had a job to do. He had a daughter at home who had known all along. That evening, Marcus came home to the apartment on Sepulveda Boulevard. He hung up his jacket. He looked at Priya's painting still on the kitchen wall. The house by the water, on the enormous sun. He went to the bedroom. He lifted his good jeans from the chair. He reached into the front left pocket and took out the folded piece of paper. He held it for a moment. Then he unfolded it and read it one more time. The way you reread something when you want to make sure it still means what it meant when you wrote it. To the man who stopped, thank you for the time you gave me. I hope you know what it was worth. He folded it back. He didn't throw it away. He put it in the drawer beside the spare batteries and the takeout menus where things go when they are too important to display and too important to lose. He made grilled cheese. He waited for Priya to come home. Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching this from. It could be a cozy bedroom in Canada, a lunch break in London, a commute in California, or a quiet evening somewhere we have never even heard of. We read every single one, and we love knowing where this story landed. If this video moved you even a little, if Marcus's morning on that guardrail felt familiar, if Keanu's 3 quiet words hit somewhere real, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it tells us to keep making stories like this one. And if you believe the world gets a little better every time someone simply pulls over, subscribe to this channel.